But that's a very good start. May I now invite Victoria Tauli-Corpuz, Special Rapporteur, to give us her address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I would first like to thank the Human Rights Council for organizing this, and the Philippines and Bangladesh for sponsoring the resolution which called for this high-level panel. Indigenous peoples, like many developing countries, are among those who have least contributed to the problem of climate change, but are the ones suffering from the worst impacts of this, as many of the previous speakers have said. Most of them live in the most fragile ecosystems, such as high mountains, the Arctic, low-lying coastal areas, and open grasslands, among others. Because of how and where indigenous peoples live, climate impacts are quickly and fiercely disrupting their communities. The IPCC says that displacement risks are worse where incomes are low. Indigenous peoples are among the most culturally endangered communities, as they live in places where climate change greatly threatens their survival. I have had a chance to meet with young people from Kiribati who have shown me pictures and videos of how their homes have been destroyed already. And I also had a chance to talk with Ursula Rakova, who is the leader of the Carteret Island people who had to move to Bougainville because their islands have already sunk. The IPCC's fifth assessment report raised concerns about climate change impacts on the Aymara in Bolivia due to water shortage, indigenous peoples in the Arctic, especially in Canada and Russia, and on the livelihoods of Sami peoples in Northern Europe. Clearly, the adverse impacts on indigenous peoples of climate change exacerbates further the weak realization of their human rights embedded in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and ILO Convention 169 and all the other human rights instruments. There is no doubt that the realization of the rights to self-determination in development, as well as the rights to food, water, lands, territories, and resources, to their traditional livelihoods, cultures, and knowledge, are the ones being seriously challenged. But aside from these adverse impacts, indigenous peoples have also spoken of how some of the solutions to mitigate climate change are also violating their rights. When solutions such as the development of renewable energy, production of biofuel crops, and REDD+ are done in their territories by states and corporations without fully consulting them and getting their consent, their rights also get violated. This is why many indigenous representatives have been taking part in the negotiations and put a lot of effort in putting safeguards in the REDD+ decisions. I was part of the Philippine government negotiating panel in climate change since 2009, and the Philippines was the one who pushed strongly for these safeguards that are now contained in the decisions. Since I assumed the post as the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples last June 2014, I have been receiving reports about how land grabs for the production of food or biofuels and for building renewable energy projects, such as hydroelectric dams and windmills, have affected them. Indigenous peoples also have asserted that they can provide solutions to mitigate climate change and also in the work of adaptation. The nature of the problem calls on all of us to contribute to its solution. Let me now quickly move to what indigenous peoples are offering in terms of solutions and how this link with human rights. We need all the solutions on the table to solve climate change, and indigenous peoples have proven methods that will help us. The IPCC confirmed what indigenous peoples have been saying for a long time, that indigenous peoples' knowledge increases the effectiveness of adaptation measures. And I quote, the report says, indigenous, local, and traditional knowledge systems and practices, including indigenous peoples' holistic view of community and environment, are a major resource for adapting to climate change. But these have not been used consistently in the existing adaptation efforts. Here are the ways the IPCC says we can help manage climate impacts. A key way to manage problems associated with decreased food production and food quality is strengthening indigenous knowledge and practices. Community-based adaptation and community-based natural management are key to resilience. Two key opportunities the IPCC identified for mitigation and adaptation are the ones where indigenous peoples are already leading the way: sustainable agriculture and forestry, and protecting ecosystems for carbon storage and other ecosystem services. There are several studies which have already been done that show how respecting rights contributes to mitigating climate change. The World Resources Institute has done a study which shows that in countries where indigenous people's rights are recognized in their forests, the level of deforestation has decreased significantly. Like in the Amazon, Brazilian, 11% of they are higher by 11% compared to other places where rights are not recognized. I would like to conclude by saying that the participatory of rights of indigenous peoples matter as well. Giving indigenous peoples their full voice and vote in decisions yields stronger and more effective outcomes. I will remind all of us again that the rights of those who suffer the most from climate change and yet can contribute to the solution should be protected, respected, and fulfilled. And finally, I would like to thank the 18 member states who signed the Geneva Pledge on Human Rights and Climate Action, and I echo the appeal to have more countries sign on to this pledge. Thank you very much.